So, if you remember what we did before was we created a sphere, a plane, and a little area that's green that represents grass so that we could better um, understand our, for better visibility between our sphere and our grass. So let's go ahead and double click our player controller here and we'll open up Visual Studio. Now, once Unity, you create a script in Unity, it comes with some default code in it. So I'm going to hold the control key down and scroll my middle wheel in. And what you'll see is it zooms in, which makes it easier for readability. I'm going to zoom in the biggest, well, maybe almost as big as I can, so you can see that a little bit better. Um, it comes with this method or function. You're going to hear those words interchangeably, and it looks like this. One called start and another one called update. What I'm going to do just for clarity is I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to press the delete key. And what that'll do is it'll remove everything and leave it just with the our public class name and an empty area. Now, the way I want you to think about this is, and we're going to get deeper into this is just sort of a text document. It's just a file. And the heading of our file, like the heading of your paper, this is the title. Player class, public class player controller. And we'll get into this stuff later as we build on our scripting skills. But for now, just think about that because Unity wants these up here, we want to leave these using words in. So we want to think about things when we're coding um, in sort of a structured order, right? We want to plan it out. And in coding, a good way to start planning things out is just by commenting our code for our future programmers or our collaborators. So we do that with two forward slashes, and this is called a comment. And we want to think about what kind of parameters are we going to need? Well, I want my ball to have a speed. So we want our let's say hero or player slash player to have the ability to have some speed, right? We want him to move with a certain level or rate of speed, um, and we we want there to be some sort of physics that is going to keep our sphere on the ground should we want it to jump. And we want to give our player some control of the sphere. So this could be arrow keys, and we'll just put arrow keys question mark. And so this is good for now. We don't want to get too crazy and add all the features at first unless we really know we're working with a designer or we're the designer or programmer ourselves. So let's start with this one. It's pretty easy. What we can do is create a float and speed. And let's just make this equal to 10. F represents float, and then hit a semicolon here. Now I'm going to hit Control and S to save it. And I know it's saved because the asterisk is gone. Now, when I jump back into Unity and I select my sphere, I'm thinking maybe it would be nice that if on our player controller script here, we can actually see the word speed with that number and adjust it on the fly so that as our game designers or programmers or artists want to adjust the animations or the movement of the speed to work with gameplay, they can do it in real time. Well, Unity has a really nifty way of doing that. And what they do is if you write the word public in the front, and I'm going to hit Control S and save that again. Notice the asterisk is gone. It'll make that variable public, and then you can adjust it in the viewport, and that'll adjust the speed. So we're going to leave it at 10 for now. Something else is I was thinking about this physics here. I'm like, what is something that comes into Unity built in, and it gives us the ability to, um, like when I have my sphere in the air, say it's going through a jump and I press play, and I want it to get pulled back down to the ground. Well, you'll notice right now it doesn't go anywhere. Well, Unity has this nifty physics system called rigid body. And the rigid body 2D you might have saw is for 2D elements. We want the one without the 2D, and that's our 3D. And if it has use gravity on, notice what happens to our sphere when we press play. It falls to the earth. And because it has a collider on it, which is this, looks like this wrapping around it, that's what's actually stopping it from going through the floor. So if we didn't have that collider, so I'm going to uncheck that so you can see that, it'll actually fall directly through the floor. See that? So we need these colliders or these collision detectors. So I'm going to move it a little bit closer to the ground, press play. You can see we're here. Okay, looks good. Now, um, let's go. I'm actually going to just one time because it's sort of dark. I'm going to go to Windows here, rendering, and I'm going to open up the lighting settings. I'm just going to hit generate lighting once and leave it unchecked just so now when we press play, you can see our scene has some baked lighting in it. Okay, so let's get back to our script. The next thing I need to do is, in order to manipulate the movement of my ball, I have to get this component, which is my rigid body here. Because remember, rigid body controls the physics. So one way of doing this is I can add force or push my sphere in the direction of the person pushing the arrow keys. So let's start with getting this component, this rigid body component. So I'm going to go in here, and inside of this thing is I'm going to use the default function from Unity. So it's void start, looks like this. And what's interesting about the start function is the second that the game plays, right? The second that you press this play button, because this sphere has this script on it, it's going to look to this method or function first. So let's do as a test, let's do print, and this prints things to the console. Hello from start. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to General, and then Console. And right now it should be empty, and it is. So what's going to happen is when I press play here, it should say hello from start the second the game starts up. You can see there it is, the timestamp, and hello from start. Okay, cool. So we know that that is working, and it's in here. So let's go ahead and create a variable um, that will create a variable that will get this rigid body. So for the sake of this, I normally would make these private because I don't want to clutter up my scripting area here. But I'm going to go ahead and make it public so you can see it. So public. Now if I want to get this rigid body from my sphere, it's pretty easy. I just write the word rigid body. And because it turned green, it's a word that is a default word from Unity. You can't really use it again for anything else. So we're going to give it a variable name. Now, just like our number, all a variable is a temporary storage place. It's a container. So I'm going to say public rigid body RB semicolon, and I'm going to hit Control S. So now this variable is able to access, with one more step, this component. Now, because you can get a rigid body on another object or other things, they have a way of specifying that I want to get this component on this object, because you can have millions of physics objects around in a scene. And the way we do that is in our start, I'm just going to write RB equals get component with these less than and greater than brackets, open close parentheses. And inside of this, I'm going to double click this and paste it in there. Now, if you get any red squigglies anywhere in your code, that means you have an error. So go ahead and pause this video right now, look at this, and see that your code looks like this. And then I'm going to save this, jump in here, and I'm going to press play, and we're going to see if this none rigid body gets populated with this rigid body. So I'm going to press play, and there it is. It says sphere, which is the object, rigid body, rigid body. So now it's attaching this rigid body to this object. All right, I'm going to stop this video here. And I would suggest that you could, for fun later, make a cube with its own rigid body and test it that way.